Hello, everyone. Welcome to another YouTube Live. It is Friday, December 12th, 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Patrick Scott here. I'm going to try to eliminate the glare. I hope you're having a great week. So it is coming up on mid-December, and the holidays are just around the corner. You've navigated Thanksgiving, and that's kind of fun. And you now have Christmas and New Year's to look forward to. It's a time of it can be a time of rest. It can be a time of rejuvenation. It can be a time where things professionally slow down for us. It can be a time of joy and happiness, time off. I know the way the calendar is configured this year, I know here at the clinic, we get 4 days off. I think it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that we have. It's a 4-day weekend, 2 weeks in a row. And so that's kind of fun. And it also can bring with it memories. And I want to talk today about why the holidays can be difficult for people and kind of how and some strategies around managing yourself around the holiday season. And so if you have plans, be safe and all that stuff. But um, we grow up in cultures and families and economies, countries, and they really form the foundation of the way we live our life. And so if you've worked with me or followed me for any length of time, you understand that I specialize kind of in the unconscious mind. And we just had our meeting. Hi, Aurelie. And who is here? Oh, Joshua Hayduke, who wishes me to adopt him, which has already been done, is here. So welcome. We just had our group supervision, and I'm going to tell you a quick story, a clinical story, about a couple. And so they come into marriage counseling, and this man, they're probably both in their 40s. They've been married for about 11 years. They have one or two kids. And the pattern is she's of a fiery persuasion, Latin American, and he is of a non-fiery persuasion. Let's call him Caucasian American. And they have a dynamic. And the dynamic, he has a history of trauma. He has a history of being abused physically and sexually. He has a history of an alcoholic family. He has daddy issues. And he, in their marriage counseling, describes her as a bully. And that they've been married for a while, and that she basically just, undermines him and criticizes him and is kind of a bully. And he, because he's a people pleaser and he's a good cooperator, he just has taken it and doesn't fight back and is very passive. And she doesn't necessarily like that he's so passive, and she'd like him to, as we say, grow a pair. And he has been now seeing a separate therapist here at Heads Up who has been challenging him to have boundaries. And so understand that we, in relationships, and I'll talk about romantic relationships in particular, are attracted to what's familiar, not necessarily what's good for us. And so if you know anyone, not you, but if you know anyone who's dated the same person in different bodies, you know what I'm talking about. You see it. You see the boyfriend, girlfriend, and it's the same kind of a person. It's the same type of a person. They have the same behavioral characteristics. Sometimes they look a lot alike, where you see that they break up with one, they find another one, and it's the same type. And so karmically, we have lessons to learn here in this lifetime and in these bodies. And the lessons revolve around polishing our souls to be closer to our creator, as it's said. And one of the karmic lessons that we're here to learn is how we do a relationship, romantic and otherwise. And you will see people who have particular patterns in relationship. And yes, Aurelia, I'm reading your mind. And I could adopt you as well. The application's very long. Josh can help you. And I'm going to tell you some stories because I want you to really tie this into your own experience. Understand that from the larger perspective, relationships are some of our greatest learning. Now, I'm talking about the holidays. I'm talking about your families of origin. As we talk about it, I can say this to you, that we chose our parents, we chose our siblings, we chose our circumstances, We've incarnated in these bodies with spiritual lessons to learn. This is the earth school, talking theoretically now, kind of how it goes in the new age, that we have to take full responsibility for our karma, if you will, from a Buddhist point of view, and that we attract certain things by virtue of our karma, by certainly of our family of origin. And we're going to go into that today. And to be wonderfully responsible, to take a look at your patterns, trends, habits, and themes and go, oh yeah, that's me. That's totally me. And I'm going to give you a bunch of different examples. And this is not by way of beating yourself up, self deprecating, but just a self awareness to go, wow, I totally do that. I am absolutely the one that has chosen what's familiar. And I'm going to give you a bunch of different examples. Um, so this particular couple, the man now has been in his individual therapy and he's starting to have boundaries. Now, this could go either way. She has found in their couples work that he's just so passive, she'd like him to get more of a backbone. Well, now he's getting a backbone. And what was reported today, and because understand, we have this weekly supervision meeting where I and other supervisors help the clinicians, students, and interns process their cases so that they bring their cases to this group, and then we kind of brainstorm and talk about ideas and suggestions. And this was one of the cases before us today. And it was great that apparently it's going very well. All of a sudden, and the exact words were, all of a sudden she's wildly more attracted to him because he's getting a backbone. So in individual therapy, he's standing up to her. He's saying, this is not no longer acceptable. You no longer can talk to me that way. Stop, da, 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 da. And he's working through his own issues with his father and his own issues with his family of origin to actually develop into the kind of man that he wants to be. And the good news is she's loving it. She's actually loving it. She's actually embracing it and going, wow, who are you? And I'm so glad you went to therapy, that kind of thing. So that it could have gone a different way. It could have, because, you're not the man I married and, that kind of thing. So we evolve in these relationships. Another example, woman comes in, also mid 40s, if you will. This is a funny story. And she says, kind of done with men. And she said, I said, well, what's going on? She says, well, I've just had a string of bad relationships and they're abusive and they're violent. And she says, I seem to always be attracted to the biker guy, the tattoo guy, the DJ, the womanizer, the F boy, if you will. And I really want to shift that. I've been married a couple times. I've got some kids. All of my husbands have been deadbeat dads. And I'm noticing this pattern and I really need to work on, like, what is it about me that continually attracts these types of men into my life? And so we looked at it. We looked at her history. Again, another history of trauma, a history of abuse. This time, not sexual abuse, but physical abuse. And not on her, but in a domestic violence situation. So her household growing up was very violent, meaning her parents fought. And she said, it wasn't horrible, meaning like they didn't, like, wasn't knocked down, drag out fisticuffs every day, and their police weren't called, but they just fought all the time. It was a level of loudness and argument that was just horrible. And so I said, well, are you putting it together? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, what are you used to? She says, well, I'm used to loud. I'm used to tough guys. I said, okay. So I said, let's work on this. And I said, are you dating? And she said, yeah. And what I'm noticing is I'm attracting the same kinds of guys. And I don't remember the name of the app, but she was on an app and she was doing on the dating app. And she said, and it's weird, like magical woo-woo stuff where I'm putting out what I want. What I want is a nice guy who's financially stable, who's reasonably attractive, who takes care of himself, and what I'm getting are bikers and, guys that are DJs and that are F boys and that just want sex. They don't want anything else. They're not interested in a relationship. They're graphic and they're vulgar. And this lady was an executive in the casino industry here, a very high, like C-level, C-suite executive in one of the big casinos here. I have to be careful, this was 15 years ago. I have to be careful because confidentiality being what it is, I can't give you too much information about her. And so one day she comes, we were in therapy for a few months. She comes, she goes, well, got news. I said, okay, I'm ready. She goes, I met a guy. I said, really? She goes, and we created that avatar in therapy. We created the type of guy that I wanted. We created, everything that I need in a man, and he fits it to a T. Absolutely fits it to a T. And I said, okay, great. That's good news, right? She goes, well, I don't know. And I said, what's going on? She says, well, he's just so nice. I said, okay. Well, he's just so nice. And, he wants to take care of me and he has a lot of money and he wants to support me and he opens doors for me and he dresses so elegantly and he wears nice cologne and he's just so nice. And I let it hang in the air for a while. And I said, you're bored. She went, I am. He's just so nice. I said, okay, stop. You don't recognize what a good guy looks like because he doesn't have a knife to your throat, because he's not a DJ. Nothing against DJs, but apparently DJs have a reputation. He doesn't have a knife to your throat. He doesn't have a gun to your head. He's not got a bike. He's not the bad boy, the abusive one. And you don't know how to act because you have never had someone who was kind and gentle and smart and wealthy and willing to support you. So what we get to work on in therapy is just that, is just the exact thing about you get to stop and don't screw this up because this might be just the guy for you. And she was, and he is, and they're still together a long time later. So my point is, you are attracting relationships by virtue of what you're used to and what you're familiar with, for better or worse. Now, if you have done work on yourself, you are going back into an environment that you came from during the holidays, potentially, where you learned all of that stuff. Now, several things could happen. Number one, they may not know or notice that you've grown, right? They actually, um, it really asks the biker DJ that is a nice guy. No, she found a guy who was actually nice, who was not a biker and not a DJ. I suppose if you can find a nice guy that's healthy, that's also a biker and a DJ, then yippee for you. Anyway, so you're going back into these families of origin, and the families of origin are where you learned your defense mechanisms. They were where you learned your coping mechanisms. They were you learned. Now, number one, they may not see that you've grown, and you may go back into a scenario where they're treating you like you're 7 or like you're 10 or talking down to you or treating you like a child, and they have not updated their filters. And so I'm going to give you some strategies at the end of this live just about how to manage that. But right now, understand that that's a thing. You're 35 years old. You're a completely competent, well-functioning adult. They don't see that. The last time you were in the house, you were 18 or you were 16 or whatever it was. So that's number one. They may not see that you've grown. So you get to develop some patience around that. Number two, they may not have grown, which means they're doing the same things they were doing 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 15 years ago when you were a kid. The parents or your brothers or your siblings or your aunts and uncles or whatever the extended family are just doing business as usual. And that's so you're going back into that environment, into that soup, if you will, where it's just kind of like some of that can be really comforting. The foods and the traditions and the rituals and all that kind of stuff can be really, really, really great. And you may notice that when you've been away from it for a while, it's like, oh my God, that's right. Aunt Tilly gets really drunk, and then my mom and dad fight and, that kind of thing. And so understand. So you need to prepare for that. Number three, you have to own your own triggers, meaning they don't know. They really don't. If you've had a bully for an older sibling and they pick on you, you may be going into a situation where the old pattern of being, and unless you're willing to confront it, and I don't think Christmas Day dinner is the time to confront it at the dinner table necessarily. You may just have to suck it up and get through it. And I'm I don't mean to be negative, but I understand that so many people talk to me about, gee, how do I navigate going back into this toxic wasteland that is my family of origin? I love them. They're my family. They're so amazing and they're great. And there is a level of drama or a level of hysteria or a level of criticism that I just kind of have to gird my loins every time I go into that environment because I'm going to get feedback, about anything, my hair or my outfit or my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my job or whatever it is. And so, and I'm going to talk about in a minute, I'm going to talk about strategies. And so the third thing is that you have to own your karma and you have to own that you chose these parents, you chose these siblings, you chose these families. So what I'd like you to do between now and the time you go back to those families of origin is I'd like to have you to evaluate those karmic patterns. So what did you learn from your family of origin, right? I was raised by a single parent, a single mother in the 60s who had 3 kids. My father died when I was 15 months old. He died of lung cancer, and she had never worked. And she went to work, and we were poor. And I didn't know we were poor until I got to college. She was such a great parent to us that we never really knew we were poor. You know, I didn't realize that that there were rich. I don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I knew we weren't rich. Don't get me wrong, because she always complained about money. She always complained. She was a depression era mentality kind of a person, and so I just didn't know. And so when I had my first roommate in college, who had a very fancy sports car and was on a free ride and was majoring in smoking weed and drinking and sex. That was his major. Not really, but that's all he did. And ended up flunking out of college in his first year that his wealthy parents were paying for. Um, I didn't know. And so, but the idea was my mother was very critical. Some of you have heard me talk about my mother being like an Asian dad, which my Asian people, friends think is hilarious because apparently Asian dads have a reputation for being very tough, very um, never good enough, never enough. In fact, I saw, okay, true confessions, I work with teenagers, K pop demon hunters. Audrey Nuna, EJ, and Rayami, the 3 women singers who did the singing for K-pop Demon Hunters. If you have kids, if you've ever heard of kids, if you've ever known that kids exist, and if you're on the planet, you should know that there's a movie. It's animated, and there's a soundtrack that's been nominated for a Grammy called K-pop Demon Hunters. Enough. They're Korean American, and it was so cute to see them uh, interviewed, and they actually talked about the whole Asian. And for those of you Asian friends of mine out there, the whole like it's never good enough. And they talked at length about. I mean, they're like big stars now. They're getting to be big stars, having this billion streams on Spotify. This song Golden and some of the other songs from that soundtrack. And I follow pop culture. I love it. It's beautifully done. They were on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There's method to my madness. Just hang on. And they're just wonderful young women. The lead singer EJ was at 11 was brought into one of these K-pop training companies. I don't really know how it works, but K-pop is a big thing, Korean pop. And if you've heard of BTS, or in Hyphen, or there's a bunch of different groups. And she was rejected. She was there for like 8 or 9 years, and she was told that she was too old and too ugly and not talented enough. And so then she went into songwriting, and here she is in her 30s, you know, rocking it, being a songwriter, and then now performing, and doing very, very well. Wonderful hero's journey story, EJ. And I saw her live a couple days ago, and in the golden, they were singing it live, not lip syncing it. She cracked, and it was so beautiful because she's so humble and so sweet. And they talked at length about the Asian parent syndrome. Now, many of us grew up with parents who were extremely tough. Now, of my generation, very, very tough. My mom, if you didn't get an A, what's the point? If you got a B, that was horrible. If you got an A plus, why did you take the class? Clearly, you don't need to take the class. And it was truly, there was never going to be enough money. There was never going to be enough anything. It was just so, my core wound that I formed as a child was I'm never enough, which explains the 18 years of college and all the accomplishments and all that. So my brother and I joke about it. It's like our mother, man, didn't matter what we did or how much we did. Now, she wasn't overly critical, meaning that she was proud of us and she was would give us great feedback. but there was never a point where you were done. There was never enough money, never enough school, and that kind of thing. I think many of you have kind of come from those families, so I know that you know what I'm talking about. And it was so fun to see these three women who are literally everywhere. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on Jimmy Fallon. They're just like everywhere right now. Look for them. And I'm 66, and I know it's EJ is the lead singer, Audrey Nuna, who's actually a Korean rapper, and Rayami. I know their names. They're Korean. And for me to know that and remember them, they got to be pretty out there. And of course, I work with my teenage girls primarily, and they just think it's great that I know them and I follow them. And all they talked about in these interviews was you don't get any. Like one of them was telling a story about being in Seoul, South Korea. They're Korean. I mean, they're American and Canadian, but their roots in Korea, ethnically Korean, speak Korean, by the way. Um, but very Western. They speak English perfectly, all of them, and live in LA or wherever they live. And one of them was in Seoul, South Korea, because they have family there. And she said that she got off, she was in the subway in Seoul, and she got off the train, and there was an old man with a traditional ancient Korean instrument. She says he had to be in his 80s or 90s. He was all dressed to the nines. And she said, I forget how she said it in some real colloquial way, that his outfit was fire. She goes, his outfit was fire, totally fire, meaning really dressed up. And he was playing and singing their song "Golden" from K-pop Demon Hunters. And she said that touched her so much, because for an elder, for a senior to appreciate that music and that movie and that soundtrack meant everything to her, because you don't get a lot of credit for doing much of anything apparently in that culture. So as you go back to these people that hatched you and these families that you come from, understand that even though you have evolved and you are a rock star now, they don't know that. And in fact, sometimes if you're pretty successful, they will do their best to remind you where you came from, right? That you're not all that in a bag of chips, and that you need to get over yourself, and that you need to stop being so highfalutin, because they will bring you down to size, right? And so I want to talk about the idea that, and you may have great experiences with them throughout the year. You stay in touch, but there is something about the holidays that gets everybody together, and all of those patterns come up. So what I'd like you to do as a result of watching this video is I would have you self-evaluate. What are some of because it's private, you don't need to do this publicly with anyone, but just reflect on what are your core patterns. Like, what did you learn from your family of origin? I learned to be a good cooperator. I learned to be very productive. I learned a very strong work ethic. I do get concerned about younger generations. And this sounds like an old man speaking, and I guess I am. Um, and just so you know, my mother was very concerned about the younger generations in the 60s. My mother would say, honey, this country is going to hell in a handbasket. And it's easier for me to look at the current political climate, or the wars that are going on, or the conflicts, or the fraud, or the economy, or the president, and just kind of see it as another cycle and rhythm. Because we had a president in the 70s that was impeached and resigned from office, Richard Nixon, because of, bad dealings. I'm not going to go into a history lesson, but I want you to understand that from somebody of my age, or if you take somebody who's even the greatest generation, I'm a baby boomer, the greatest generations, which would be the World War II generation, who are in their 80s and 90s now. Very few World War II vets are still alive, if any, really. But Vietnam, let's say, era, or Korean War era. I had a 95-year-old Korean War vet in here the other day. It was awesome. It was great, wonderful talking to him. And they have a different viewpoint, because they've seen the generations, they've seen decades of cycles and rhythms. And so it's easier for me to say, okay, yes, the economy sucks, the president sucks, the wars suck, the political climate sucks. There are certain countries who suck. We suck, they suck, everybody sucks. And somehow we make it as humans. So if you go back to your families of origin, you're going to be energetically triggered into those core wounds that form the foundation of your development right now. I'm going to say this again because it's really important. So I want you to find and identify what you learned from your family of origin? That's number one. Number two, what is the core wound or core wounds that you took away from that family of origin that warrant your attention? Now, you may have worked on them already, right? This is somebody saying, "Hi, Kumu, first time tuning in." And I don't know who that is. So I don't know who Calm Gal, I can't even read it. So if you have a name, I'd love to know the name if you're willing. We'd love to say hi to you. Um, oh, Riley. Hi, nice to see you. So anyway, um, self-evaluate. What did you learn from your family of origin? Number two, what are the core wounds? Mine was I'm not enough. No matter what I do, I'm not enough. Never enough school, never enough money, never enough looks, never enough weight loss, never enough skincare, never. Now, I took that on. My mom didn't give a shit about my weight. She didn't give a shit about. I mean, she liked the money. She liked money because I was supporting her in her old age. But just the attitude that I learned was always now. There's an aspect to that. So if you look at my brother and I, both doctors, and my brother, what random year of my birthday a few years ago, just said reached his Diet Coke up and just said, I'm here cheersing to our mother. Remember how we were never enough? And I said, I sure do. He goes, well, I guess we proved the bitch wrong. And we clinked our glasses. And I just thought that was hilarious because we have. We're fine. We did very well for ourselves. We're very successful. And I think she's very, she died a long time ago, but I think she would be very proud of us given what we did. And I think she would take credit, by the way, for being so tough that we made something of ourselves. And so, again, number one, what did you learn from your family of origin, for good or for better or worse? Number two, what is your core wound? Now, core wounds in humans, I only find 5 or 6 of them that being pretty strident, meaning all humans have core wounds. Sorry, I don't like to speak in global terms, but I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people in the last 40 years, and most folks walk around. Ernest Hemingway called it, most people lead lives of quiet desperation. In my experience, most people walk around with something that they're working on, meaning I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm too this, too that, too the other thing, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy, period, I don't exist, I don't matter, things like that. And so just evaluate, and you can watch the recording of this if you need me to run that down again. But find out what your core wound is that you took away from your family of origin. Then, number three, before you go to the holidays, set a determination that you're going to just suck it up and just be there and love them anyway. Love them anyway because they're going to be just doing what they do. They do not, most of them, lie in bed at night thinking of ways to insult you, thinking of ways to, hurt your feelings, thinking of ways they don't. And so set an intention to love them anyway, and just come with that point of view that you're going to love them. Now, I realize I'm painting a picture of a level of toxicity that most of you probably don't have. So I'm not trying to read too much into it, but I do get a lot of feedback. Remember, I'm a therapist, so people don't come to me when things are going well. They come to me when they're really struggling. And so what I hear, and I'm getting a lot of calls from patients now about, gee, can we get a session in before the holidays? Because, whew, my mom or my uncle or my grandfather or whatever it is. And so set the intention, and I'm just going to say it simply, just love them anyway. Love them for who they are. And then understand from a karmic perspective, you created this. And this is hard for people to hear. And you can say F you to me. I'm perfectly willing to hear it. The theory goes that spiritually, Earth is a school where we choose these bodies. And again, you don't have to believe me, but this is kind of one point of view. We are on the other side. It's heaven. It's beautiful. Bunnies, rainbows, unicorns. It's all love, pure, clean love. And remember, I've had 2 really empowering near-death experiences where I was on the other side. And it is everything they say. Light, beautiful, stunning. If it's all love all the time. So when we're on the other side, we are very optimistic about what we can, so we meet with our higher council. I'm just going to give you the theory as kind of one point of view about how life works. It's not even mine. I didn't even invent it. I did notice it And I'm not going to get into a scientific debate about, well, you only noticed it because you read it, you were hallucinating because you had this yeah, whatever. I have my experience, and I'm not going to argue with any of you about my experience. I had my experience and I'm sticking to it. So you meet with your higher council, wise elders, and you say, I want to work through the following things in this next life. We know that lives of ease, lives of coasting, lives of great wealth, some lives of royalty. I think being royalty is very, very challenging. I wouldn't want a life being a royal these days. But apparently, historically, being a maharaja or being a pharaoh or being a king or something or a queen was a life of great ease. Now, if you have a life of ease, a lifetime of ease, often that is considered to not be very spiritually evolving. The lives where we grow the most are the lives of greatest adversity, the lives where we're challenging our karmic patterns, the lives where we suffer, the lives where we struggle, the lives where we challenge ourselves to be better than we are, the lives where we go through great obstacles and great barriers and great adversity and we overcome them, the hero's journey, right? And there's, hundreds and hundreds of examples of the hero's journey riddled in astrology and the tarot and the Bible and the Quran and the sutras, and it's the hero's journey, right? And all of our television, all of our movies. I saw Wicked for Good last weekend, Elphaba's Journey, Out of Oz, right? It's the same story. I don't know if you know that. It's the same story. Born a certain way, born of strife and struggle, overcomes great obstacles, helps a bunch of people, rides off into the sunset. Sorry. And so if you are having the hero's journey and you were birthed in a family of great strife and great struggle, congratulations. Obviously, your soul could handle it. And there is a saying, I think it's a Christian saying, God wouldn't hand you anything that you couldn't handle, or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on Christian scripture. And so I would love it if you would go back to your families of origin this holiday season with an intention of gratitude, with an intention of loving them anyway, with an intention of great appreciation for the lessons that they taught you. Sorry. And have some good food and have some good drink and have some turkey or ham or stuffing or whatever it is you do at Christmas or whatever your holidays. And I'm saying Christmas. I realize that many of you don't celebrate Christmas. Whatever you do this holiday season. And I'm not trying to be politically incorrect. I realize that many of you have traditions I'm not Christian. I don't celebrate Christmas, but I know that that's kind of a predominant holiday in the Western Hemisphere. And I know that in January there's the Chinese New Year, and a lot of Asian friends of mine celebrate the Chinese New Year. But the drill. So I'm not trying to be exclusionary or not politically sensitive to the fact that not everybody celebrates Christmas, whether you call it the holidays or Kwanzaa or Hanukkah or Christmas or time off, from your busy schedule. If you're going to be going back to your families of origin, I'm going to give you one technique, and then we're going to bring this one to a close. In the STFU class, I teach a technique called meshing, and I was just with leaders in Billings Clinic last week, doctors, teaching doctors leadership, and I use this with them. And if you work around people, or if you have ever been attacked verbally, or you've had somebody come at you with a real aggressive, tense way, I'd like you to visualize, imagine, or feel that your body turns into an orange bag of oranges without the oranges. So those bags of cuties or oranges or tangerines or tangelos that come in those orange mesh plastic bags. I would like you to, this is a very simple technique. Do not overthink it. Just visualize, imagine, or feel that your whole body is one of those big orange mesh bags. Now what you'll notice is sticks and stones can break your bones, but names will never hurt you, which is an old nursery rhyme. You will be untouchable. The negativity comes at you. You are mesh. You just let the energy pass through you. There's a word that many psychics and intuitives use to describe psychic attack with like a whack, like you're being whacked. And this has been my go-to strategy to just not get whacked. In Costco, in Trader Joe's, in Whole Foods, those angry people at the meat counter in Whole Foods, oh my God, they need to have a sandwich. They're so angry because they don't eat enough, I don't think. That's my joke. I'd be pissed off too if I was vegan. Oh my God. I know this is a shitstorm is going to come my way. But I'll just mesh and you can just send me your vegan comments. I tried vegan. I was vegan for 20 years. I really was. When I was modeling, I was vegan for 20 years and it was great. But I'm not vegan anymore. Um, so what I would like, and this is how I want you to do it. As you prepare, you're going to do the three things I asked. You're going to figure out what you learned from your parents or your family of origin. You're going to come up with your core wound. Don't overthink it. You know, if you do Huna with me or you do Ho'oku with me, you've probably identified a pattern in your life. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm an imposter, and I'm rolling my eyes because if you're reasonably intelligent, you know these are not true. These are historical. They could even be past life. So this idea that I'm not enough, even as I say it, I go, well, I'm enough. I know I'm enough. I had a couple staff members give me certificates of enoughness 2 years in a row for my company. Thought that was great. I have them. You are enough. And so figure out what that is for you. No tears, no wailing and gnashing of teeth. Just go, yeah, like what? If I had to come up with a core wound, like what drives me? What has formed the foundation of some of my decision making in this lifetime? What was my family of origin? Did I get criticized? Did I get put down? Was I neglected, abandoned, invisible? I'm invisible. I don't matter. And like I said, there's only a half a dozen or so, and they are: I'm not enough, or I'm not good enough. I'm an imposter, not lovable. I'm not worthy of love. I don't exist. I don't matter. Something like that. And don't overthink it, but tap into it and go, oh yeah, that's it. And I learned that from my fill in the blank of the family member. And then before you go, set an intention to express gratitude and love for them. And then when you're there, before you get there, mesh. Fill yourself up with light. Your body is a mesh bag of oranges without the oranges. And just see how it goes. When that family member who typically comes at you after a couple of drinks, they get kind of snarky after a couple of drinks and they criticize what you're wearing or who you're dating or not dating. Aren't you married yet? Don't you have children yet? You know the drill. How's the pumpkin pie that I made? Well, it's not grandma's pumpkin pie. I'm being ridiculous, but these people are ridiculous. Just love them anyway. And I know that's easy for me to say. I love my family. I really do. And I love my family members. And I'm at an age where I've accepted them for who they are. And we're in a good place. And it took some work to get there. And so have a great holiday. Be well. Live long and prosper. Uh, take care of yourselves. And I don't, I'm going to look at the calendar. I don't know if we're going to do this next week or not. We are not. But you know why? Because Heads Up's having its Christmas party extravaganza at the time of this live next Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific. We're going to be having our holiday celebration here at the clinic, congratulating each other on another year. Well done. So I wish you the best, and I wish you a wonderful holiday season with loads of love. We will see you next year.